We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
In 2002, my mom and stepdad bought a house in the neighborhood I grew up in after living in an apartment and splitting custody with my dad for 5 or 6 years. The location I'll keep unnamed. The neighborhood was planned, and all of it was built on old orchards and abandoned farmland, which went all the way back to old Oregon settlers. For 2 years, we never noticed anything strange or weird happening. We didn't even think about our 4-year-old house being haunted or anything like that. I believe the first thing that happened over the summer. My brother, a friend, and I were at my dad's house, which was a few miles away. And my brother went back to my mom's to grab something, but he never came back. Later, we found out from my mom that he had gone upstairs and was going to his room in the dark, and he heard a young girl's voice say,
"Hey, Jake!"
coming from the bathroom, which was adjacent to the hallway to his room. He apparently heard it loudly and very clear, and then ran to his room, slammed the door, and then slept with the lights on. The next day, he asked my mom if it was her, and she said she wasn't awake at the time. Things became more concentrated after that incident, and it involved my brother, and would continue for another 10 years on and off. One time, our friend Tony said while he was sleeping in our game room upstairs that he felt someone stroking his hair, and he heard breathing. He thought it was us messing with him, so he got up, and then realized the TV was shut off because it was pitch black, and that we weren't there. He was so freaked out, he ran downstairs and slept on the couch in the living room. A few months after that stuff, I started to notice things in the game room when the door was open. A few months after that, I started to notice things in the game room when the door was open. The small hallway upstairs was perpendicular to the game room, and if you wanted to go downstairs, you had to walk towards the room and then take a right down the stairs. Things seemed to be blacker than black, and they were walking back and forth in an already dark room when I looked at them. At night, with the shades down, that room was extremely dark, and to see things moving back and forth was terrifying. I mean, it almost seemed like there were groups of entities walking back and forth. And this was way before I ever heard anything about shadow people. A couple of weeks later, my brother and I were watching TV at night downstairs, and my brother had fallen asleep. After about 20 minutes, I saw movement in the darkness of the stairwell, which was right across from the living room where we were. I fixated on the movement and saw something in a light-colored robe slowly sliding down the stairs as if it were floating and not walking. Then I saw a hand or something like it stretched out on the railing, which faced me. Initially, it scared me, and then I thought, hey, maybe it's my mom because she wears a robe at night, and she also has medium-length dark hair. Unfortunately, that comfort didn't last, because a second later, whatever it was just faded into nothing at the bottom of the stairs. I was already shaking my brother at this point, and he really didn't care what I saw, and he didn't believe me, but it was comforting to at least have someone awake with me at that time. Then, things started to get weirder in the house. I noticed my cat was always fixating on something in the upper corner of my room, like something was floating around or talking to her. I mean, it freaked me out, and any time she would start doing it, I'd kick her off my bed. One night, my mother woke me up at 2 a.m, and she asked me in a very terrified voice if I could check under her bed. Of course, unlike any other brave, accountable son, I said, yeah, no. Initially, she wouldn't tell me why she wanted me to, but I pressed her, and she finally told me she woke up because she heard screaming. And this wasn't a dream because she said she continued to hear it after she woke up, but it wasn't coming from outside or downstairs. She said she heard it underneath her headboard, almost as if it was someone screaming like they were being dragged to hell. I mean, those were her words. I got up, and we went and checked, but we didn't see anything of note, and I can't remember if she went downstairs or not for the rest of the night. Sometimes at night, I would be up and usually make myself a late dinner. Almost every night for a few months, when I did this, I would get a really anxious feeling being in the kitchen. What it felt like was as if some strong, angry, big, and terrifying thing was yelling at me at the top of its lungs to get the fuck out of there. I mean, it felt like I was definitely hated and did not belong. It was awful when it would happen. I mean, perfectly normal kitchen one second, and then boom, it was a hateful, sinister environment the next. One time, I saw what looked like a young kid walk across the kitchen archway, and man, that was unsettling. More weird things started happening, and they became more frequent. I mean, loud fucking bangs, crashing, and chaos. We had a few cats in the house, so anytime one of these crashes happened, they'd run up or downstairs depending on where the noise originated. I mean, 2 times that stick out were once when I was downstairs watching TV, and my mom was upstairs. All of a sudden, I heard the loudest crash I'd ever heard in the house coming from the garage. It sounded like all the shelving on the wall fell over and crashed on top of glass and metal. I mean, the sound shook the house. This was no earthquake, and I've had it happen before. This was just this loud bang. I mean, it sounded like everything was falling off the walls. I quickly ran to the garage door, fully expecting to see carnage, but not a single thing was touched or had fallen. I inspected and searched around. So did my mom. We were both really freaked out. Another time, I was again downstairs and heard upstairs what sounded like everything in my bathroom being thrown to the floor, and all of the soap crashing in the tub. This was followed by the cats racing down the stairs. So I ran up, thinking that the cats had knocked all my stuff over, but there wasn't a single thing out of place. A few years after I moved out, my mom and I decided to do some EVP sessions in the house. My mom actually asked the questions, and she asked if it was a boy or girl. And clearly, I recorded something saying, boy. To be honest, I can't remember all of the questions, but we got other responses in a male voice. Of note, it was just my mom and I, and if I spoke, it was obvious. I mean, there were no other people there, and I let the device record in the room after we left, and you can hear tons of noises, like someone was moving around in the room. As I mentioned, I moved out into my first apartment. I felt like whatever was at the house was actually attaching itself to me, and I still feel that way to this day. I constantly have cold winds in my house around me at night when there isn't a window open, and I'll hear voices of people that aren't in the house calling me. To be honest, I hate it. One of the most memorable experiences I had was within the first couple of days my roommate and I moved in. There was an Anaheim Duck game going on, and I was getting on my laptop to find out what the score was. This was 2007, and smartphones weren't as common as they are nowadays, plus the internet was terrible on them. That's when I heard the nastiest, most guttural growl coming from my room while I was sitting in the living room. We didn't have cable yet, and I didn't have any TV on or any music either. I mean, it literally sounded like one of those demon dog gargoyles from Ghostbusters. It scared the shit out of me, and I remember that sound to this day. I don't know why it happened, but it never happened again. A few years went by, and the most activity me and my roommate had was him saying he sometimes heard someone walking around in my room or in the kitchen, and he thought it was me, but I was never home when he heard them. Actually, this kind of stuff happens a lot even now. My wife says she hears me walking upstairs or fiddling around in my record room, but I'm never home or asleep downstairs when she hears it. Creepy stuff like that. I eventually had to move back to my mom's place after my roommate decided to move home to save money. My mom later moved out, and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, moved in. She isn't one to admit to seeing things, but one time she saw something in our bathroom mirror while she was doing her hair, and she refuses to tell me even to this day exactly what it was. She'll never admit when she's scared. I mean, even at horror movies. She'll get up and go to bed acting like the movie was dumb when it was actually scaring her. So, one day maybe she'll feel up to it. She did bring it up one time, but she was being very vulnerable, and she was scared when she told me about it, and she quickly zipped her lips, and now denies ever saying anything about it. Anytime I was living there, nothing would happen. Nothing happens anymore, but I feel like whatever was there is still with me now. Maybe it's going to pop up briefly here and there. I don't know. I actually had a spiritualist tell me that something was partially possessing my life, or something negative was attaching to me, and that it wasn't a part of me. I went through prayer with a few spiritualist healers once when I was 21. It was pretty weird at first, but I felt it. I felt like something left me for a while, and my life felt more positive. I work at a hospital, a town over from where I live, and I work as an environmental service, also known as housekeeping. Every hospital worker has to wear a badge with a picture, first name, and your department on it. I'm also a 5'2" girl, if this matters. I used to park out in front of the hospital instead of our designated parking space because, 1, it was more lit out in the front, and 2, it just seemed easier. I now park in the back in our designated area and walk out with a coworker who leaves at the same time I do. When I get to work, it's still early evening, so around 4-ish, and normally we have a few people outside or inside our waiting or wheelchair area, and you'll occasionally get a few, "Can you help me with this?" or "Do you know what floor so-and-so is?" So there's just people coming up to you because you're wearing scrubs and have a badge. It's not uncommon or weird. Except for this one time. I got to work a little early so I could eat before clocking in and then get right into work. I was walking across this little crosswalk from the parking lot to the entrance when I get, "Miss, could you help me with something?" I turn around and see a decently dressed man in his mid-30s at best. "Sure, what can I help you with?" "My wife is on the 3rd floor, but I can't figure out which entrance to use." "Sure, you'll want to use this one, because the one all the way around on the left is for the emergency room, and the one all the way across to the right is for the physical therapy and the senior center." "Oh, okay, thanks. What time do the doors lock?" 8 o'clock. He nodded and walked through the doors. I didn't think much of it, other than if his wife was really on the 3rd floor, he should have known what door to use, especially since it had main entrance on the front. But I told my shift manager, who then radioed security to maybe keep an eye out for weirdness. I finished my shift, and it was about midnight when I finally got outside the doors and halfway to the crosswalk when I heard, "Hey, it's good to see you." I turned my head to see the same guy from earlier on the bench outside. I gave a polite nod and continued on my way to my car while unlocking my phone and getting my shift manager's office phone number up and ready to call. He called out again, "Hey, I want to talk to you. Come and chat." I replied, "Sorry, it's late, and I have people up and waiting for me at home." He said, "Do you live around here?" I ignored him and just continued to walk as fast as I could without running, and that's when I heard him speed up a little bit to catch up with me. "Come on, you're a pretty girl and I'm a decent guy. Why wouldn't you want to chat?" After that sentence, I was about a foot away or so from my car, and I pushed my automatic lock and swing my purse off my shoulder so I can just chuck it into my car and slam myself in and get away from this dude. He yells out, "Hey!" I slam my purse in and then slam myself in, all while locking my doors and slamming my key in, and getting ready to leave while he reaches my car and slaps his hand on my window. He says to me, "That's not cool. Let's chat." I'm done talking to this guy, and I'm seriously ready to get home. So I rev my car a little to let him know, if he isn't moving, I'm running over his foot, and good thing, he can limp to the ER and explain how his foot was run over. I pull my car out of park, and slowly, one more time, rev my engine so he knows I'm not fucking around, and he steps back, and then I pull up through a few parking spaces before speeding out and getting onto the road. The drive home was spent on the phone with my shift manager, who was radioing security to see if he was still out there and if they could see him anywhere else on the location. They couldn't, but they checked the cameras back and saw him following me, and then me leaving, and about 2 minutes later, him leaving as well. The next day was spent with security, and then telling me they are going to forward this all to the police, and to please use our designated parking space, and to call if I see him in the building on my shift or when coming in and out of work.